And welcome to the Monday, May 8th Maplewood City Council meeting. I normally start off the meeting talking about something that's happening in our community or something that is impacting our community. And I wanted to recall that last Monday, May 1st, we had the memorial service for the 13th anniversary of Sergeant Joe Bergeron, who was killed in the line of duty. Sergeant Bergeron was a Maplewood police officer that was shot and killed while he was protecting our community. And I want to thank Councilmember Cave and Councilmember Juniman for coming to the memorial service. It was great that we could be there and pay our respects. It was something that I think we've done every year for 13 years in losing an officer in the line of duty. And I wanted to note that our neighboring state, Wisconsin, has now had the third officer in the western part of Wisconsin that has been fatally shot on duty just within this last month. On Saturday, St. Croix County Sheriff's Deputy Katie Lysing was shot in the line of duty. She was on a call about a drunken driver in a ditch, and she wound up exchanging gunfire with him, and she was shot and killed, and the suspect ultimately, I believe it's that he committed suicide in the woods not far from where the incident took place. And so as we kind of start off our meeting, I thought what I would do is call for just a moment of silence for the law enforcement officers that we've lost. 3 in Wisconsin in 1 month is 3 too many. And it's, I see from Maplewood, the 13th anniversary of Sergeant Joe Bergeron, and it still impacts our community. It impacts our staff. And our law enforcement officers are so important, so critical to the health and safety of our community. And so we want to support our officers. So what I'd like to do is call for a moment of silence in recognition of the 3 most recent officers that have died in the line of duty. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, everyone. Let's remember that they have a very hard job to do and that they serve us in our community. And it's a very dangerous job, or it can be a very dangerous job. So with that, everyone, let us do the Pledge of Allegiance and start our meeting. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Clerk Sint, would you do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
Here. Thank you very much. Next, we have the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any unanimous? Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes. First, we have the April 24th, 2023 City Council Workshop meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the April 24th, 2023 City Council Workshop meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Next, we have the April 24th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So move. Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the April 24th, 2023 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to appointments and presentations, we have our council calendar update. City Manager Coleman, this is your subject.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. Looking ahead at our council meetings, we have we talked about having an EDA meeting, and we scheduled that just earlier at our workshop. That will be June 26th to, again, look at the Reuter-Walton project, creating the TIF district and plan and approving the development agreement. And also, I wanted to just mention that staff had a conversation with Ramsey County today on the Ponds property, and I will be getting that scheduled for you, and that might be able to fit on the June 26th meeting. We'll take a look at get back to you on that. On May 18th, which is next week, we will have a City Council and staff retreat, and that will be held at Wakefield from, I think, 8:30 to 4:30 or 4. On May 22nd, Mr. Love is going to present to you the draft snow removal policy. And there's going to be a lot for us to think and talk about with that, so be ready. And then we're also going to have a workshop with the Met Council public engagement process for the Purple Line. That wasn't really explicit there, but it's regarding the Purple Line and the new engagement process for the White Bear Avenue route. In addition to that, major community events. Earlier this evening, some of us were talking about the fire department bike rodeo, thinking it was last Saturday, and it's actually tomorrow night. And so there's still an opportunity to go. Also, we have a couple more events in the month of May. One is Cop on a Rooftop, which sounds a little intriguing, huh? And that's a Special Olympics fundraiser. And that's going to be at Dunkin' Donuts. So I need to find out a little bit more about that. It's piqued my interest. So anyway, we'll see.
I've actually been there, so I can tell you that officers go up onto the building, the roof of Dunkin' Donuts, and you can drive through and make a donation, and then you get a coupon for like a free coffee or a free donut or something like that. And it's really kind of fun. There's a lot of athletes from Special Olympics that are there collecting money. So if you're so inclined, it's from 6 to 9 a.m. I plan on going and getting some breakfast.
Do the officers have to stay up there till they get a certain amount of money? What's the rooftop
You know, Chief Beardeman might
Do you
know
know more
that.
about
I just know that they've been up on the roof and waving.
It sounds pretty fun. I might have to
Yeah.
go just to find out what it's all
fun.
about. And then on Arbor Day celebration is going to be May 20th at the Public Works Garage. So a lot of good things coming up. And with that, Mayor, I would stand for any comments or questions or things that you've been thinking about that you'd like to have staff look into on your behalf.
Okay, Councilmember Cave has her light on.
I just have one for Cop on a Rooftop. Is there any, I think it would be Chief Beardeman, is there a way people can donate online who can't make it there? Do you know if that's
That's a great question. I'm not sure, but I will find out, and we can definitely throw it. If we can do that, we'll put it on our Facebook.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Good question. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a quick question. I forgot, I was going to make a comment for council presentation. Is it too late to add something to it really quick by any chance, or?
Let's wait. Was there something for Melinda?
No.
Okay, so we'll add that in just a moment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else for Melinda? Okay, council presentations, we'll go ahead. What would you like to add?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Asian Pacific Islander Minnesota Heritage Month. So, just really quickly, just wanted to call out May as the Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The Asian American community has made Minnesota home. I remember my father telling me many years ago when they showed up here, why would someone from Laos and Thailand show up in Minnesota where it snows and it's cold? We made Minnesota home. We absolutely love the state, and take some time to do some research and see what's going on around the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs actually has a really good blog online, and I'll give the website to Andrea here in a little bit. You can go on there and search up some of the resources that are available about Asian American and also what's going on in the Twin Cities area here. We have Hmong American Day coming up at the Capitol, so a lot of other exciting events happening. So just wanted to call that out.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, Mayor.
much. Okay, moving on to our strategic plan updates for the first quarter. Ms. Knudsen.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Lois Knudsen. I am the Administrative Services and Performance Measurement Coordinator for the city. One of my main tasks is overseeing our city's strategic plan and reporting to you on our plan progress. Here we go. All right, so in our first quarter, we are at 32% progress on our plan. And just a reminder that in Invisio, that progress is driven by the action initiatives, which are the very lowest level of our plan. So as those progress, it drives that progress bar. One other thing to consider is if things are on track and they're an annual measure, we'd be at 25%. But we also have several measures which are ongoing, more project-based, and that's how we are at 32% right now. So that's good. We're in a good place right now. There's approximately 9.2% disruption with the plan. These are the same disruptions we've had for a while. I don't think there's anything new in there. And in front of your places, there was a disruptions report, and the story behind that is Invisio has a new report builder, and it took me a little longer to get that report figured out to come out the way I wanted it to. So that's why it's in front of you and not in the packet. But some of those minor disruptions are the Acela implementation, which continues to be an issue. The police department is still needing to hire a crime analyst. There was some disruption in finance, and that was related to the audit. Staff was busy with the audit, so something didn't get taken care of right away. And then again, the major disruption is still tied to the purple line because that measure is tied to our Gladstone development. So one of the things I did during the first quarter is I like to meet with all of the departments and talk about their measures. What's going on, what's working, what's not working, what can we add, what should we get rid of? And one of the things, or that really made a difference this time is Public Works. Steve Love went above and beyond with this. He met with each of his divisions and talked to them about what's in the strategic plan. A side note, one of our parts of our employee reviews is how is your work affecting the strategic plan? Well, a lot of people don't know. And Steve took it upon himself to go above and beyond with that with his divisions. So he had meetings, he told them what the plan was, and he said, hey, what can we change? What should we add? So there's some new measures in here, mostly in the Public Works Department, which came from the frontline workers. So they can now see where they fit into the plan and what a difference they're making in the city. So we are going to start with community inclusiveness. There was diversity training held for our boards and commissions in the first quarter. Our staff is currently working on reviewing job descriptions to ensure that they're fair and equitable. Part of this is tied to our comp study that Baker Tilly did. Part of what their job was to provide updates to our job descriptions. So our staff will now be comparing what our existing was and what Baker Tilly put together for us. But then we want to add an extra step to that and view the job descriptions through the lens of equity to make sure the job description isn't keeping someone from applying for or being qualified for a job. We continue to offer recreation programming together with the YMCA and Rev Sports. We are offering outdoor and nature-based programs. Most of those are being held at the Nature Center, but they are in conjunction with Ramsey County 4-H and District 622. When we got the results of our National Citizen Survey back, they pointed out some areas where we need improvement. And one of those is they indicate that we're missing an opportunity to better connect with our non-white and newer community members. So that's something that we need to keep working on. Our MORE team, as well as the senior management team, something we need to dive deeper into and see what we can do better to make people feel more included. Environmental stewardship. We got the numbers back on trash and recycling. Residential trash collection is down, which is good. That's what we want. Recycling was also down, but just a tiny bit, and we're not really sure if that's related to people reusing more, people using less plastic, or people just being in the office and not at home as much as they were. So not really anything to worry about there. And then another new measure we added. We have always been tracking the number of trees removed. And when I met with Parks and Natural Resources, we said, hey, we should also be tracking the number of trees that we're planting. What are we doing to replace the tree canopy? So now there are two different graphs there, one on the trees removed annually and one on the trees that are being planted. And we're actually doing quite well. I think we're replacing more than we're taking out. So that's good. Financial and asset management. We finished 2022 at 99% of budgeted expenditures, and that's right where we want to be. The goal is to be within 1%. And then these next measures are things that the Public Works Department came up with, new measures. These are all new measures. They were things that we were tracking anyway, but now we're reporting on them as part of the strategic plan. And those are, we are tracking our sanitary sewer backup calls. We are tracking the material prevented from entering the storm system through street sweeping. So when the street sweeper goes out, when they come back to empty, they weigh everything that they have collected. So that is all material that is being prevented from going into the storm sewer. So that's a new measure we've added. Internally, we're tracking our facility maintenance requests. Again, it was all in the system. We're just going to report on it now. And then also our fleet department, they are going to be reporting on their preventative maintenance calls as well as the repair tasks. So we can see, is the maintenance we're doing keeping the repair numbers lower? Are we doing more preventative and less reactive to incidents? So that's another good measure that our Public Works staff asked us to include.
I see Councilmember Juniman has a question.
It's actually not a question, it's a comment. To show how these mesh together
Yes.
and that keeping track pays off, both the part about tracking the material from the street sweeping and the fleet preventative maintenance play into our environmental program as well. It's part of our Green Step City. So it all goes together.
And that's one of those tough ones where I was like, well, where should I put it? Should it be under asset management or should it be under environmental? And you're right, it goes under both. It works under both.
Yeah.
Integrated communication. Our State of the City event was held virtually again this year, and it was planned, produced, and marketed by our communications team, and they did a great job. It was another wonderful event. Marketing via flyers, videos, and social media posts for all of our spring and summer events. And those first quarter events were the Easter egg hunt, spring cleanup, bike rodeo, the Bergeron Memorial, and the Battle of the Badges blood drive. And currently they are starting to gear up for the planning and promotion of all of our summer events coming up, 4th of July, as well as all the events in the parks. Also, more than $20,000 in partnership advertising packages were sold. So those people, they'll be featured in the Maplewood Living with their ads, but they also then get sponsorship rights for some of our events like the 4th of July event. Operational effectiveness. Our wellness program hit its all-time record high, our participation at 89%. So I think the previous high was 86, so we are really making good progress with that. And don't know if, part of it's staff, part of it's maybe a lot of our new younger employees that are kind of excited about it. Our health inspection staff is now using an electronic system to conduct and track their inspections. During the first quarter, a catalytic converter ordinance was passed. The crime statistics from the first quarter appear to be trending downward. Not sure if that's tied to winter or if we really are making a difference. And then the fire and EMS response times are improving, which is what we expected to happen after the North Fire Station has been established. Targeted redevelopment. The London Lane project with 119 new affordable housing units is scheduled to open by early summer. J.B. Vang submitted land use application for review and held a neighborhood meeting. And this project will include 65 affordable units. And then there's a 241-unit housing project approved for the Myth site. And then nearly all of the approximately 500 rental housing properties have been inspected. I think there are 5 that haven't been inspected at the time that this report was done. And that is all part of our rental licensing plan, those inspections. What's next? At the upcoming council retreat, we're going to be looking a little bit at the strategic plan, more from a view of what is our vision, what is our mission statement, and what are our values. I think we know what they are, we just haven't taken the time to put those into words, so that's something we will be looking at the upcoming retreat. And then I am going to be working with our fire department to incorporate their strategic plan into Invisio. So they have their own plan, which they're just wrapping up right now, and then I will work with their staff to get that into Invisio. And then there are measures that are common between both plans, their specific fire plan and the overall city plan. And when they're both in the same thing, you only have to report on it once. So it's going to help with some redundant work as well. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Lois, thank you for that wonderful report. I always marvel at the fact that we are able to track our city services and that we are able to measure what's working, what do we need to improve on. And I want to thank Steve Love for his work reaching out to the people actually implementing our plan and getting them personally involved. I think that that is great because it's one thing to have the plan, but to have people really understand it and working towards those goals is something that we really want to encourage, and I think that's great. So thank you very much for that. And Lois, thank you for all your hard work, because this is not always easy. We're a service provider.
Right.
And so we're trying to quantify what it is that we do so that we can do it better, and we know what we're doing well and what we need to improve. So thank you very much for that. Council members, anything else you want to say? Councilmember Cave.
Just to thank you, Lois. Great job. It was a
you.
great report having it, and the success of it moving forward. It does really help us up here, and you make it really clear, and I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lois.
Now you need to make
Moving on, the next, we don't have to adopt that, do we?
You need to make a motion.
Oh, okay,
to
we need a motion?
to
I
accept
think I
the
did this the
report.
last time, too. Would someone like to make that motion?
Motion to accept the strategic plan report for first quarter of 2023.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the first quarter, I'm looking here, the strategic plan update for the first quarter of 2023. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to our, we have a resolution for commissioner reappointment. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, we have to take a look at John Gasper's term on the Heritage Preservation Commission, which expired on April 30th of this year, and he is seeking reappointment. In his application, he also filled out an assessment for you to consider, just getting his opinion on what have been successes and what suggestions he might have for making them function more effectively or efficiently. So that's there for you to read. There is a recommended action, and that is a motion to approve the attached resolution for commissioner reappointment on the HPC for Mr. Gasper for a new term which expires April 30th of 2026.
Thank you. Would someone like to make the motion?
I motion to approve the attached resolution for commissioner reappointment.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Villavicencio. The motion to approve the attached resolution for commissioner reappointment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to our consent agenda, we have 6 items. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, item G 1 through 6.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the consent agenda items G 1 through 6. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Villavicencio, I think you were first.
Can we highlight, 5 and 6 are together?
Okay, 5 and 6, Councilmember Juniman.
That would be 6 times 2.
Okay, so we'll do 5 and 6. Let's look at 5 first. That would be Chief Beardeman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. What you have before you is, the first one, number 5, is the motion to approve the resolution accepting Ramsey County Emergency Management and Homeland Security Grant. That's for the amount of $52,500 for a camera trailer. We use the camera trailers primarily for proactive enforcement. And we have one currently. The demand from the public to set these cameras up in high crime areas is extremely high, so the one that we have now is not currently enough. And so we're asking for a second one as part of this grant. This grant came through in 2001. For whatever reason, we're not sure, but we got approved the grant, and then several days later, it got denied. And now the Department of Homeland Security called us and asked us how our trailer was, and we do not have the trailer. So something fell through along the communication lines between the Ramsey County subgrantee and us. And so now we're, again, that was before my time in 2001, but we're still approving that, trying to get that grant approved for the same trailer now, so.
Okay, thank you very much. And, excuse me, G6, Chief Beardeman, that is yours as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So the total for the trailer is $60,125. G reflects the difference of $7,625 that the city of Maplewood or the Maplewood Police Department would have to pay to get that same trailer. As part of the grant, they only will supply $52,500 and nothing more. So the difference is what we'd have to provide.
Sounds like a pretty fair deal to me, yes. Thank you. Is that sufficient?
Yeah, my only question was, that sounds all great. I was just wondering where the remaining would be paid out of? Grant? Okay, just the regular, gotcha. Thank you.
All right, we've had a motion for G 1 through 6. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. We have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business. Moving on to new business, we have a conditional use permit resolution concerning multiple residential dwelling at 2627 Stillwater Road East. Ms. Parr, this is your subject tonight?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. We are lucky enough to have Elizabeth Hammond, our planner, with us this evening. She has not been before you. I think in the past, this is her first time, so we welcome her to present this item to you this evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. It's nice to be here with you. As she said, Elizabeth Hammond. I'm a planner in the Community Development Department. And so the first item that I'll be going through tonight is a conditional use permit request for 2627 Stillwater Road. The property owner is requesting approval to allow for a multiple residential dwelling on the property. The site is just under a half acre, and again, requesting a conditional use permit. The property is guided future land use as mixed-use neighborhood and zoned business commercial modified. The comp plan guides the property for neighborhood serving commercial, retail, and medium to high-density residential housing. That would allow 8 to 31 units per acre. The proposal for residential housing meets that intent. The property owner is specifically requesting approval to allow for up to 10 residential dwelling units on the property. Our code requires a conditional use permit for all multiple residential dwellings within that business commercial modified district. So go through some history here with you. So the city has documentation of 6 residential units on the property, and some of that information was provided in your packet when the city council approved a change to the land use plan and the zoning designation in 1985. The land use was changed from residential low density to residential business, and the zoning was changed from business commercial to business commercial modified. At some time after that, 4 additional units were added to the building, and this was without any city review or approval. Those units were discovered, as was just referenced by Lois earlier with our rental licensing program, upon inspection. So this request is being made to allow for those additional 4 units that the city does not have documentation of. It would formally authorize up to 10 units on the property, but it would not increase the potential for any additional units beyond that at this time. So historically, there's been a mix of commercial and residential dwelling units on this property. And based on the limited documentation in our records, it's unknown when they were added to the building. The owner has stated that the units were in the building when she purchased it in 1995. The process to add units after that initial rezoning would have required a conditional use permit before modifying that structure to allow for those additional units. So the CUP today, kind of in backwards, the CUP today would bring the property in compliance with that initial zoning approval for multiple residential units on the property. And it would allow the city to ensure that our zoning, rental licensing, and life safety building codes are achieved, and then continue going forward. So from a land use standpoint, staff is supportive of the request as it meets that intent in our comprehensive plan, guiding that property to allow for this. If it's approved, the property owner would work with the city's building official to ensure that the property complies with required building codes for residential habitable space. If the applicant does not meet these requirements, the property owner will be required to remove those additional units, and then, if for some reason that did not occur, would be subject to civil or criminal citations issued by the city. I won't go through all these comments from our building official, but essentially, if this is approved, she'll need to work with a licensed design professional, have plans drawn up that illustrate the construction of the building and where there are any areas that need to be modified to allow for up to 10 units to meet the habitable space requirements.
If you want to wait just a minute until, we'll call you up to the microphone in just a second, but we want to finish this presentation first.
Great, thank you. So, so after that, there is also another item that would need to be addressed from the city standpoint would be SAC fees. So, the sewer availability charge, it's a determination letter from the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services that would need to be provided to the city that would detail any units that have been paid or that would need to be paid. Part of that fee goes to the city, and then part of that goes to the Met Council. We did send out notice to the neighbors. There were 2 comments that were received included in your report. The Planning Commission did review this in April on the 18th and recommended approval. This is before you tonight, and staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit. I'm happy to answer questions, and the property owner is here tonight as well.
Council members, do you have any questions?
Not yet.
No questions from the council right now. You're the owner. Do you want to step up to the microphone, please? If you want to step up to the microphone, please. Welcome to our council meeting. Please state your name.
My name is Cecilia F. Chen. I purchased the building back in 1995. So I have been managing it. I got 3 children. They all grown up there, and then they are all professional, 3 engineers, but 1 pursue an attorney, so he's a patent attorney. So they're all doing well. And I myself, because the original owner was Miller's, I think the building was built in 1947, and they own they have a restaurant, they have grocery store, and they live there, and they build apartment. I think that was happened like in 1962 or before, and because they build stuff in around the apartment, around the building first, and then they build 2637. So it was all owned by the same owner. But what happened is, I think, because they put out so many apartments and they could not make mortgage payments, so it was foreclosed by Lake Elmo Bank, and then they all huge amount of property tax, and they couldn't pay it. So I think Lake Elmo Bank, they sell the property to a person who can take care of the building. So we actually bought the property from the person back in 1995. So when we purchased the building, we just moved there, we live there, and I'm a financial advisor, and I have my office there. And back then, so everything, like she mentioned about sewer and whatever, but I pay one bill and sewer, and everything was like it was before. So I don't quite understand why I have to pay extra sewer because I didn't bill anything. So actually, I have tenants now that living like in the front and the side. They have been there for years, 20, 25, I don't know, many years. Because it used to have like a motorcycle accessory right up in the front. And people, they just early in the morning and there's motorcycle noise and everything. And people living there just complain that it's too noisy. So when they move, I just took it back for our own use. I didn't rent it to another business. And then actually my office was an alteration station. So when they move, I just take it as my own office. And then there's another office down on the side in the front there. It used to be like a window display. And the owner, he used to live across the street, so he just have that space. It got electrical and phone, everything. So he just have that space as his display, and when people come here, they pick up phone, call him, he walks across the street and show them the window. But because when I was there, I wanted to keep the building quiet. So when he moved, when he did not need the showroom, I took it back and I just used it for like a storage. And then there's another portion of it was like a workshop for a handyman that he worked for the previous owner to take care of the building. And it was like rented for $50. That's it. So when I bought a building, I keep that for my own storage too. So I think Mr. Lee, you live across the street. So he knows that I have people living there for years. And I have no idea that I could only allow to have 6 units. Not until they have this rental licensing program. So I think all this plumbing, all this stuff that there was built in 1962 or earlier. Because when there's a problem with faucet, and I hire those people come replace faucet, I look at the faucet, it's like made in 1960s, made in Taiwan. So right now with this, it's like, now I have to apply for 4 additional units. So right now this 4 units, that's actually tenants living there, and I have tenants living there for years. And because I manage this place, so a lot of time I have many thousands of dollars of rent that I cannot collect. I have stake up of the judgment, I cannot collect a penny. So what happened is when the tenant, when they have problem pay rent, and they don't want to move, they will call City or Maplewood Housing and say, I don't have electricity, I don't have heat, or I got mold. So over years, I only 1995, 28 years, I have like the city chief, he has been in my place, he even helped me, like 2635, he had been looking all through, even try to help me to put a nail because I wasn't really handy or anything. And I have like a fire marshal have been walking all through all the 10 units too, and then tell me, I need to put a fire extinguisher, fire alarm bar. He actually inspect all the unit too, and then of course I have police come in and out many times over 25 or whatever years. So now all of a sudden, because the changing of the rental licensing program, now I would have to, they told me I can only have 6 units. So now these 4 additional units that I already have rented there, I would have to tell them to move. And I actually have told tenants, hey, what you live in is a commercial, I cannot rent it to you. And then she told me, oh, she has no place to go. She would have to live in her car. But that was winter. I mean, it was cold. So I said, well, it's kind of cold. I cannot tell you to leave. And now maybe, but maybe the weather is nicer. Really, there are still a lot of people living in a car right now because it's so difficult to find a rental place.
Can I ask you this? Do you have tenants in each one of the 10 units?
And they have been,
Okay.
I have tenants for them for many years. And Mr. Lee, he lived, so he knows. He sees. You see that I all have people live there. I don't have, like business. So, and also the thing, I think I'm doing it good for the environment, because mine is commercial and multiple family, but all the surrounding is all residential. So all of a sudden, if I change all these 4 units back into commercial, and there's traffic, there's noise, there's people come and go, and well, I like it quiet. I like it to make it easy to manage. So since when I have tenants there, they actually, some of them really, I don't know how they make it, but they just home every day. So they watch the neighborhood, and they text me if something strange here. So they actually helping to watch the environment too. And I mean, over years I learned, because I got some bad tenant before, but I try to check the background, and I try to have unit. I try to have just 1 or 2. I don't want to have a lot of people come in and out. So
I hear you indicating that you want to keep it as 10
Yeah,
rental
because-
units?
Yeah, I could.
Do
I
you
mean-
understand what you need to do to bring the rental units into compliance?
I know. So what I'm asking is if you can agree to grandfather those units, so that I don't have to do any major construction, but I will still go through the inspection. The inspection, you tell me, oh, what I need to do. I will still comply to the inspection, but don't ask me to hire engineer and spend like $50,000 or $100,000 try to alter the whole place. I don't think I can do that. I mean, I'm just.
We can't tell you that this, what we have done
Yeah.
is we've set the standards.
Yeah.
We can't tell you that we don't know what the cost is going to be. But
Yeah.
as the owner of the property, you'll
Yeah.
need to bring it into compliance. Are you willing to do that?
So I really don't know what the compliance standard is, but I have tenant there and for years, and nobody have any problem. So I don't know what kind of changes or what I need to do.
We have some other questions from council members. I see
Okay.
Councilmember Juniman.
I don't know that this is for her. Sorry. It might be for staff. But later in our report, the other thing that seems to be a problem is some of the neighbors find it unsightly, and they are worried about the number of police calls. So we need to address that as part of this. I don't want that to get lost.
Okay. I know that was in part of the reports. Maybe, do we have any information about the number of police calls at that address? Okay. Then I think we'll find out some more about that.
Because that's, my point is that's part of compliance if you have to clean up around the place.
Right. Let me turn that question to Ms. Parr in terms of compliance with, I know I read the comments too, that the building has not been kept up in terms of it being in disrepair, for some concerns about, well, it's all in here, that it's very unsightly and it hasn't been kept up well. Ms. Parr, what can you say about that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I think there's 2 things to look at here, or there's many, as was brought up, there are many items to look at here, but 2 in particular that staff is looking at as a part of this conversation has been, one, in relation to just the structural elements. Is it safe? Not even just talking about the initial 6, but these others that have been added on that have never, ever had any type of evaluation, understand if they're even stable. From a building standpoint, that's a minimum, pretty low bar, but that's what that minimum is that we're talking about, that the building official comments were in your report. And then the other is the unsightly piece. I think as a part of bringing it up to code compliance, you would likely see some of those things improve as well, naturally as a part of that, as things are modified and brought up. But it definitely doesn't meet the minimums in regards to the current status. I don't know if Ms. Hammond wants to add anything to that?
Mayor, members of the council, I just was jotting down a couple notes as you were speaking there. So when our rental inspector was out on site, he noticed that there were units in the building that would be considered substandard. So he came back and we looked into the property file just to see what was approved for the property, because it appeared that there had been units added in the building. And of course, as mentioned before, we couldn't find the record of that. So what this is getting at as far as those plans is that would allow our building official to take a look at how were those units added, look at those original 6 units. From what our rental inspector has told us, those are in decent condition. It's the other 4 that are the big concern as far as this process would let us, work with her on bringing those up to code.
So what was this
Just one
for
second,
building?
hold on, we'll
Okay.
call upon you in just a second. Thank you for clarifying that and kind of giving us some structure on maybe how to think about this. I wanted to talk just a little bit, maybe for council members that were not here when we adopted the rental housing licensing standards. This was a program that we put in as city ordinance prior to COVID. And we went through a whole process, meeting with renters, meeting with landlords in our community, talking about this. And the council, and Councilmember Juniman, you can chime in if I mischaracterize this. But one of the things that we were very concerned with is that we had rental properties in our community that were not safe, that did not have electricity, didn't have running water, didn't have appliances. And so we put together an ordinance that would bring all of the standards up so that we felt assured that anyone living in Maplewood is living in a safe place. And so we went with the rental housing ordinance. And unfortunately, COVID made it very hard for us to go out and actually implement. We had to hire staff to go out and inspect, but then during COVID, people could not go out and inspect, and so things got delayed. I was really happy with the report that Lois gave us tonight that we are just within 5, I think, properties of everything being inspected in Maplewood, which is wonderful. And the ordinance is the ordinance, that it establishes what the standards are. And I do not want to do anything that is going to foster an unsafe place. And we have staff telling us that this has got to be a structurally safe building when these units were added, and they were not added with any inspection from, or code enforcement from our building inspectors here. That's a big concern for me. So that is a priority that has to be done. And then the other concern is that we have some code compliance problems at your property, and those have to be addressed as well. So that's kind of where we're sitting in a little history for council members, because we really wanted to make sure every rental property in Maplewood is safe and has the basics. And nothing less than that is going to be acceptable in our community. So Councilmember Juniman, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. And our whole point was safety for everybody who pays rent.
Right.
Because we did have units that weren't safe. And we
Well-
might not discover everything until we get to this point now where they're being inspected. And so no matter what we might wish to do to help someone, we cannot go against our own ordinance.
No.
Those
No.
units have to be safe in every way. It is the same as any other rental unit. It's just.
I
what
have a
needs-
question for you, because I understand we're kind of coming in after the fact. What kind of a timeline for compliance, if we were to adopt the CUP and the recommendation of staff tonight, what kind of timeline is reasonable to expect? Because I think that that's very clear. We need to talk about that this is not something that's going to go on forever. We might have to come back. And what would be the process what would be the timeline? And if it is not brought into compliance, what would be the process that this would come back to the council for revisiting and possibly looking at removing the license?
Sure. Mayor, members of the council, so we certainly want to be able to work with her on bringing those units into compliance. The way the condition is written in here, it is to allow for up to 10 units. What that means is we want to meet with her, if approved tonight, regardless, or not, we would meet with her to go over this. But if it is, we would meet with her to run through what she needs to do, next steps, and detail a timeline with her at that time. She would need to contact a licensed design professional, get plans submitted to us, have those reviewed, have it inspected. If for some reason not all 10 of those units would meet code, then they would need to be modified to reduce the units. And that's why it was written to allow for up to 10, so that there is some time so staff can work on this and see what will work for that site. If she can't bring all 10 units up to code, then she can't have all 10 units. We won't issue a license for them. And then the other thing would be, she would certainly need to work with the Met Council right away to figure out what SAC units are on record for the property. So those are the two big items as far as a timeline. In our CUP on the condition, we have established a 1-year review. Now, if there weren't any steps being taken by the property owner immediately working with staff, we would certainly initiate that and bring that back to you sooner. If you wanted to change that condition, I think that would be reasonable if you wanted to have it back sooner to see some progress.
I know we've done that most recently. We did that to 6 months, and I guess my inclination would be to have this reviewed in 6 months. And what we're looking for is progress and significant steps forward, rather than just kind of leave this out there. That would be my preference. But I see some other lights. Councilmember Lee, you had some comments?
Thank you,
or
Mayor.
questions?
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks for coming tonight. I do actually live across the street from the property myself, so I do see the effort that Cecilia is putting into the property, but what it comes down to is, as I'm looking at some of these apartment units, I didn't realize that they were only 330 square foot. And so I think the size of it, the safety piece of it is where it's important for me, and I want to make sure that folks who are living in there are living in a safe area. So I know I looked at the JB thing, there were some references in there for some of the ordinance requirement for per square footage. Is that what ours is here in Maplewood?
Those are specific to that site.
Okay.
But yes, we do have minimum standards.
Okay. Yeah, so.
Can I say? Well, actually, I did the drawing myself. So I have all the concrete. It's all cement block around the building. So it's the wall is this thick. So when I measure it, I try to take out the wall, and I could not get in because there's people in there, there's stock there. So I try to use my memory and just have a ruler to try to measure outside and come out. But I think it's bigger than what I mentioned because I try to look at the history. It's actually, this building has more than 9,000 square footage. And like it's including the main level is about 7,500 something, and then the basement is about 1,260. And there are actually 3 units are considered basement. It's a walkout basement.
Those are all things that will have to be worked out with
Yeah,
staff
I know. So
in
I think
terms
it's
of
bigger than that.
what would be acceptable under our ordinances. So that's something really to talk to staff
Okay.
about. Ms. Parr, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The square footage is one aspect. The other aspect that's as concerning, if not more, is the configuration of how that was broken out over time. So those that were added later, as far as safety egress, there's a number of other elements that Randy, our building official, looks at and our fire marshal looks at in addition to make sure that it's compliant, but it's also obviously safe and compliant together. So it's not even so much the breakdown of the square footage, it's how is all the other elements that weigh into that as well.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. Council, don't remember who was first. Councilmember Juneman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is sort of a chicken and egg thing. So we have to approve this tonight before we can ask her to start improving? Is that what, I mean, I'm a little bit hung up here.
Sure.
Because
Can
I'm a
you give
little
us some
nervous
clarification?
about giving a CUP for something that's, at this point, unknown, if you will. So,
Mayor, members of the council, understandable. It, like you said, chicken or the egg. It's kind of, we're doing this a little backwards. You know, okay. So if she starts this process, has a design professional prepare drawings, works with our building official, it's determined that those additional 4 units cannot be there, then she can have up to 6 units. They still need to meet the rental licensing ordinance requirements. The city has already previously authorized those six units. So she can have up to 6 units as long as they meet habitable space requirements under the rental licensing ordinance. So there will still be an inspection, there will still be a conditional use permit that will be reviewed on an annual basis, where we will be checking in on the site, making sure that conditions are adhered to. So if you're approving the conditional use permit, that's what it would entail. It would entail follow-up from the city on an annual basis or sooner upon your request.
I'm struggling a little bit with the chicken and the egg,
Yes.
quite frankly. But I also, and correct me if I'm wrong and not understanding this correctly, but if we approve this, then there isn't an immediate displacement of people who are living there. I want to try to avoid that if possible. But if the owner doesn't come into compliance, then that might be the end result. Because the goal is to try to get compliance and ensure that this is safe. Is that the better way? Is that why staff is recommending this? That then we will work with the owner over the next 6 months to see if we can get this up to compliance. And if not, then is that?
Madam Mayor, Council, that's exactly correct. This is a starting point for working to bring this property in compliance. We know that there are dwelling units there. We know that some of them are substandard, and we want to figure out what needs to be done, if possible, to bring the 4 units up to a code requirements, and if not, then allowing for those 6 existing units to be there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't approve this CUP, then that would immediately require the 4 units to be shut down and the tenants would be displaced.
We would certainly
That's where I'm.
Is
work
that where we're
with
headed,
them
Mr.
on a
Beatty?
reasonable timeline, but that's where I would defer to our attorney.
Madam Mayor and Council, I think that that's probably right. I mean, I'm not familiar with the property other than what I read in the staff report, and I'm listening to here this evening. The way I'm conceiving of this is that this is a conditional use permit for up to 10 units. It's not for 10 units. It's for however many units can be shown to be safe and in compliance with the code. I think you're right. I think if the council decides not to do anything, then the only rights the property owner has is for the 6 units that were approved 28 years ago. Anything that's occurred since then is presumably illegal. So I think there would immediately be an effort to reduce that to the 6 units. By granting the CUP for up to 10 units, it gives the property owner a reasonable period of time. As Ms. Hammond says, the details will have to be worked out. A reasonable period of time to demonstrate the ability that up to an additional 4 units can be fit into that building in a way that complies with all the standards in terms of square footage, access, whatever other code requirements. So it's not a guarantee for 10 units. It's simply an opportunity to prove that 10 units can be put into that building. Sounds like there's going to have to be an investment. So I think everybody, including the property owner, has to realize that to be able to continue to use the building for the 10 units or up to the 10 units that are there now is going to require what may well be a substantial investment.
Thank you, that makes me feel more comfortable. Councilmember, or Juniman, did
I
you
just
have
have
one more thing?
Yeah, one follow-up question. So when if we say 6 months, that means that within that time, she has to show some initiative in getting these online the way they're supposed to be. Is that correct?
Mayor, members of the council, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cave.
And I'll piggyback on that. My concern is with the 6 months, it goes into winter, which is December. So can we look at maybe doing it sooner to see that, I think in 3 months, we can see if this is really going to be something that like moves or not, I'm thinking.
I have a hard time thinking that winter will be coming again.
No, I know.
Quite frankly, but thank you for counting that out.
I know.
I
was like-
appreciate that. And I guess, I would be fine with maybe even 4 months, so that then it would, get us to early fall.
Sure.
And we're trying to be compassionate
Yeah.
here, and we don't want to displace people.
Yes.
But we still want, we have to have compliance. Councilmember Lee has his light on.
Yep, just where, I just want to say that the folks that live there are good people that do live there.
No doubt.
Yep. And so what I want to understand a little bit more is I want to be able to identify that a little bit more. Maybe that's too granular for us to understand, but 4 months, 3 months, I want to see some action. And I want us to be able to identify what that sum is, so that way we have some sort of action plan to make decisions from. So not necessarily that Ms. Cecilia just reach out to our planner and then that's some. I want to be able to identify, have we been able to connect with some architecture to draw out some plans? I don't know if that's something that you guys will put in place, so that way we can identify that, but I would like to have something for us
agree.
tonight.
Councilmember Juniman, did you want, okay.
I was just going to ask you if we can have an opinion from Danette. She seems to be bubbling
Well,
up.
Ms. Parr, can you comment on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Juniman. I appreciate that. One other option I just mentioned to our attorney as well is the first initial 60-day review. That deadline is May 29th. And then we have another, as a city, we can take an additional 60 days. So while it's not as long as some of the timeframes, we could maybe get a good understanding if we extended it to another 60 days. So you wouldn't actually approve the CUP, we'd just be extending it for further consideration to see what we could help get done in 60 days to re-review that as an option.
Mr. Beatty, and your conclusions on that?
Well, I think that's, Mayor and Council, I think that's perfectly logical. The comment I was making to Ms. Parr as the discussion was going on, I think that works from our perspective. Just looking at it from the property owner's perspective, though, I think if I were the property owner, I'd want some indication probably from the city that there was going to be some sort of approval here. So, in other words, before I made the investment, I guess I'd want to know that something was going to happen. So, I guess.
I appreciate that as well. Councilmember Lee.
So my question is to Cecilia. Do you, as the mayor presented earlier, do you understand truly what is on the plate here? What the work that you have to do as a property owner to take all of the units to standard?
I have to say, actually, those units I've been in, I think they are safe, but I don't know about what the compliance is, because the people just has been there for years, and everybody love it because they just park right in front there. They nobody wants to move unless I file eviction. Nobody wants to move, and then I file eviction is only if I see any criminal activity or if they owe me 4 or 5 months rent. I mean, I'm a nice tenant landlord anyway. So I myself, and I have lived there, I've seen it every day. I kind of, I do take care of, if anything problem, I fix it. I don't just drag, that's why the people, they love it. They always say that I am the nicest landlady they ever seen, But I don't know, if I have to really have an engineer come draw the architect and want me to do this, it's going to cost a lot of money. So I don't know if financially, if I can do that, because a lot of time I cannot even collect rent from my tenant, and sometimes if they owe 4 or 5 months rent, if they move out, I cannot collect any penny, even I get a judgment, so I just let them go. And actually, my lease is like, I have a 60 days, 2 months that notice, to move. So, I mean, in case that I realize I have to spend a lot of money to make any alteration for those units, if I can just tell them, give them notice, 60 days to move, if I can still, or I have to tell them to move immediately. But if they don't move, if city will send 2 police to escort them out of my building.
Councilmember Lee has another question.
Okay, so, and that's exactly kind of where I'm going is,
Yeah.
I want to understand what your commitment is to improving the property. So outside of the financial piece of it, like, are you willing, if we were to approve this, are you willing to, do you understand the commitment, the financial commitment, and are you willing to make the commitment if that needs be? That's what I'm interested in knowing.
It depends on how much that I have to put in, because I could rent it out, or I can leave it vacant, and I can, or just, rent it out like part-time for people who need a place for exhibition or for their art show pieces, or maybe like a barber shop, or maybe like an insurance agent office. I could change that, but for me to commit to I can put some, I can invest some money, and over those years, actually, I always take care of the place. Anytime they're wrong, if the water is leaking, or if anything wrong, they don't have light or anything, we fix it right away. We take care of right away. We don't just, if I don't take care of it, tenant is going to complain anyway. So I want it to be in a nice condition so that it won't get even worse. So we always take care of it.
We have another question from Councilmember Juniman.
I think maybe you don't understand that
Yeah.
we have limits to what we can let you do.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how you can start to show us that you will get these 4 units where they need to be, or else you're not going to be able to use them as units anymore. I think that's, and we have to get that across. And the amount of time, I guess, really should be set by probably the planning people, because they're the ones that are going to try and help you with this. But you have to understand that if these units, and that means another inspection, if these units are not considered safe by our housing people, you won't be able to use them as rental.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
whatever it takes up front, as we say, to get the right things done on paper to see that you're going to be able to make them usable is what we have to see, or else we can't grant this.
Ms. Parr, can you suggest to us a timeline? I do appreciate the December timeline, and if there is not substantial improvement, where we see that there is real effort, and obviously that effort is going to depend on what all the requirements are and the timelines, we will be the judge of that as the council, whether or not that meets what we expected to have happen. Because the goal is that they have to be safe, they have to be in compliance. And I hearken back to what Mr. Beatty said, that the approval is for up to 10, and which means that it could be 6, it could be 7. We don't know. But what would be a reasonable time for the CUP to come back to us and then look at it and see, is there substantial compliance? Are we moving in the right direction? Because then I think I would feel comfortable doing that. But what would you recommend as the time frame?
Well, I will, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'll defer to our attorney, but I'll mention a couple of things. One, I just want to be really transparent and clear about the fact, if these aren't used for living dwelling spaces, they are still going to have to be addressed from a safety standpoint to whoever you would rent them out to. Yep. So that's one thing I just want to be clear about, the financial aspect of that. I think when it comes to the timing, though, and your thoughtfulness in regards to your tenants, which is quite nice, but I think it's important that we understand that it's not just the 4, it's the 6 that need to be in compliance. Our housing staff has gone through all of them, and the 6 look like it's probably not as big of a lift. It's the 4 where there's some real questions. So I think depending on your resources and how you feel about the timing of that, and you said you don't have to have those 4, but you want to give adequate time, if you were able to have a few months to give them adequate notice, to have those spaces, I mean, that could be one way that you would go about that. And then we would be happy to work with you to try to figure out, from a resource standpoint, how could those be reconfigured when you were able to do that at your time frame that works for you?
I really prefer to have longer months, maybe 6 months, because I'm intending to replace the roof. It's about time, and I want to redo the gutters and the exterior. I want it to, paint it, fix it, to make it look nicer. So there's still a lot of exterior work that I wanted to do yet. So I mean, it just, I may not look so old, but next month I will be 67. So, I mean, aging, I can keep working. I've been working like 10 hours a day, at least 7 days a week, because my real job, I'm like a day trader. So that's how I generate income to pay for the house and pay for the apartment, because I have so many rent I did not collect. Anyway, so I still work 8 hours.
So in terms of, let's focus on in terms of the amount of time.
Yeah.
We're asking you for your input, because what we're struggling with is these have to be in compliance.
All of them.
And all of them have to be in compliance. And if they're not in compliance, then you're not going to be able to rent them. So is it 4 months or is it 6 months that you would have to come back to us?
Could you give me 6 months? Because there's really a lot of work to be done.
Councilmember Cave, do you want to comment on the 6 months?
Yes, 6 months to have everything completely done, or what I want is I want a 60-day, I would like a 60-day where good faith shows whether or not you are going to move forward with the renovations that needed to be done, or you decide that you want to give your tenants a 60-day notice. I think in 60 days, I'm comfortable with you coming up with that. Give you 2 months to figure that out, 30 days to figure it out, because then you can work with our staff and you can let them know as soon as you know what it is you plan on doing with the place.
What I'm saying, if, as the attorney say, when you say it's up to 10 units, it doesn't mean that has to be 10 units. It will be 6, could be 7, could be,
Yeah. And that's fine, but we just need to know if you are going to be committed to putting these up to standard or not. It's a yes or no, and in 60 days.
Yeah, I will try my best. I will contact people, engineer or like a contractor, and come and look at the place and ask them what I have to do and give me the estimate. But what I mean is, if the amount is just so much that I cannot afford it,
Yes.
and I cannot collect it from the rent income, I cannot tell you
Yes.
that, because all those.
But that will be a
money has to
decision
done.
and that will be a decision that you make.
Yeah.
It's
So,
your decision.
but I have to contact people and come and look and give me estimate first.
Councilmember Lee has another comment as well.
Actually, a comment for our attorney. Now, we're approving up to 10 units, so if 7 unit becomes into compliant, and then 2 years down the road, are they able to add an additional 3 units then, because it's approved up to 10 units?
I think we'd modify the CUP.
Okay.
Mr. Beatty.
Well, Madam Mayor and Council, that's a good question. I guess it depends on how how you ultimately word the resolution, and I guess I'd have to look at it more closely. I mean, there's a limit on the amount of space, and what I'm sensing here is that there are too many units have been carved out of this existing space. And so to meet requirements, it's likely that there's going to have to be 1 or more units eliminated. And so if you can only fit 7 units, in your example, into that space and meet code compliance, then I don't see how that can be expanded under the CUP as currently written. Likely it would require an additional expansion of the building, and that would trigger a different CUP. You know, just if I can maybe make a suggestion, because I think we're a little bit caught here. Maybe the idea that Ms. Parr floated a while ago is a good one, not to take action now, to give all of ourselves an additional 60 days, which we have under the statute, so that we don't have to make any decision. That gives the property owner an opportunity to sort of reflect on what's happened here tonight and make those initial steps towards towards committing to make this kind of commitment. She may decide that it's not worth it to go forward and may withdraw the application or change the application, but that gives her an opportunity to show the city some progress within that 60-day period. And then you can take action or not on the application. What I do think is important to recognize, though, is as Ms. Parr mentioned a minute ago, it's not just the 4 units, it's the existing 6 units as well. In other words, even if the property owner decides that it's too expensive to try to get any more units, I don't think that ends the issue. There are still 6 units which which apparently have some problems themselves, maybe not severe ones, but even if she abandoned, the way I'm hearing it, even if she abandoned the CUP request, there's still an ordinance, a rental licensing ordinance that requires those 6 units to be in compliance. And so she's still probably going to have to address that matter. If she then wants to expend what's probably going to be more money to try to get some of those additional units, that's a decision she's going to have to make. But even the original 6 units are going to have to be in compliance.
Mr. Beatty, thank you for kind of capsulizing that and give us some context. And thank you, Ms. Parr, for that suggestion as well. It makes sense. Procedurally then, do we table this because doesn't staff have the ability to extend the 60 days so that we would have to table this? Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council, that's correct. It's really up to the staff to exercise the statutory prerogative of giving ourselves another 60 days. You could continue it then to whatever that last meeting, 60 days out, and still within that 120 days, giving everybody as much flexibility as possible and see what we know different in 60 days than we know tonight, if anything.
I really appreciate that because it seems to me that there's a lot of unknowns, and we want to certainly be sensitive. We have 10 rental units. We don't want to force anyone out. If we can work with and communicate with the owner and staff, I know will do a great job at that. But the bottom line is they have to be in compliance. If they're not, we're not going to approve it. And so it's something that I'll make the motion myself to table this motion to approve a conditional use permit for the multiple residential dwelling located at 2627 Stillwater Road. And I would suggest when it comes back that it's got to say up to 10 units because this particular motion did not. But I will make the motion to table it. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman, the motion to table this particular topic. Is there any further discussion?
So is this
All
date?
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so at this point in time, we're tabling this discussion, and our staff will be talking with you about what needs to have happen, and it will be brought back to the council within 60 days. And then we will talk about what has been done and where we're going from there. All right?
Oh, so it's not going to approve for up to
We're not going to approve anything tonight. It is tabled, and you'll have to work with staff to get a clear definition on what the steps are moving forward. And it will be brought back to us to determine whether or not we want to approve it. Okay? So you can be in communication with staff. I'm sure that they can even speak with you outside right now. Okay?
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
actually, myself, that
Oh, we need a
vote.
vote. That's, we did. We did. We voted.
We did.
Yeah.
I didn't hear
We
it.
voted, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, I thought we did.
I didn't.
Yeah, Izal.
So I have a question. So if happen, I sell this building because I really work a lot and I work so much and my house in Stillwater is like 10 acres.
That's
I've
something
been
for
doing
you
so
maybe
much
to
yard
talk
work.
with staff about.
So,
And I think now,
yeah.
you know,
We're out of it now.
we've
I know,
tabled
it's
this
okay.
discussion, so
Yeah.
we really can't discuss it anymore. So if you want to step outside, you can speak with Ms. Parr, and she can tell you what the next steps are, okay? She's right over there waiting for you. So thank you very much. Council members, we are moving on to the next agenda item, which is the J.B. Vang Multifamily Residential Project. J2, Ms. Hammond, is this going to be yours?
Yes, Mayor and Council, me again. So, J.B. Vang is proposing to develop Gladstone Village, a 65-unit affordable multifamily apartment project. The site is 1.59 acres in size. They're requesting approval of a conditional use permit and design review. Oops. So, 65-unit affordable multifamily apartment project. The site is guided mixed-use neighborhood high density. This allows up to 50 units per acre. So 79 units could be located on the site under our land use guidance. It's zoned mixed use, which allows for a 4-story multifamily housing building with the approval of a conditional use permit. The site is accessed from a single drive coming off English Street on the west side of the building. On the west side of the site, south side of the building. The building is located on the north side of the site, and the parking is required to be to the rear, which would be on the south side there. The new building and parking lot meet all setback requirements. Our ordinance requires that the building be 0 to 20 feet in the front yard for the setback, and there are no side or rear setback requirements. The parking lot is required to be 5 feet from the side and rear, and those are achieved as well. The proposed building will be constructed with a combination of primary materials, brick and glass. Code requires a minimum of at least 60%. They do just exceed that. Secondary materials up to 30%, and they are proposing stucco and masonry. And then accent materials up to 10%. They have some metal panels shown there. Both of those standards as well are achieved. A code requires that walls longer than 40 feet must be articulated in segments of 20 to 40 feet. Elevations do show this as well. The conditional use permit requirement kicks in because the fourth floor, they're adding a 4th floor onto this building. Anything over 3 stories requires a conditional use permit. The building will be approximately 48 feet at its highest point. So code states that multifamily buildings must provide 2 parking spaces for each unit, with one of the parking spaces being covered. There are 130 spaces being provided for this project. 130 spaces would be the requirement. They are providing 103. There are 64 underground stalls and 39 surface stalls. The applicant is seeking a total parking waiver of 27 spaces, and that includes 1 space from the covered requirement. Landscape islands. Our code requires that parking lots with over 20 parking surface stalls have islands every 10 stalls. In this particular, on this particular site, that would ultimately end up with 3 to 4 islands being required, and each would remove approximately 1 parking stall. Staff is comfortable with this request of not having those parking islands there. The applicant is proposing to remove 3 of the 6 significant trees on site. Code requires the planting of 8 new trees. The applicant is proposing 32 new trees. Our requirements are being achieved there. They will need to provide additional landscaping and screening details to meet our requirements for the housing units on the south side of this site. And so an updated landscape plan will be required with a building permit. We sent notice to the surrounding properties within 500 feet. There was 1 comment that was received, and that's included in your staff report. This went to the CDRB and Planning Commission on April 18th. They reviewed the project and recommended approval. And now, tonight before you, staff is recommending approval. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we do have representatives here from JB Vang and their design team as well.
Councilmember Juniman has a question.
Could you explain why staff is comfortable with the parking waiver?
We, Mayor, members of the council, we did discuss this at the CDRB and the Planning Commission meeting. The applicant has provided a justification for that. In their other projects that they have done, they haven't seen the need for additional parking. And given the location of the site, we feel comfortable with the proposal.
Thank you.
Maybe we can ask the representatives.
Yes, and then I have one more question.
I was
more
going
question?
to
Go
also
ahead.
say, I believe they did a traffic study as well for this site too.
Well, that's my
That-
next question.
back
There was
to
one comment from a neighbor about increased traffic, and I don't think it's an issue at those two streets, but maybe we could ask Mr. Love.
Mr. Love.
We wouldn't want him to feel left out.
Mayor and council, no, I don't think there was any concern with increased traffic at this location. The intersection is served by a roundabout, and that has a lot of capacity for additional traffic.
Thank you.
Okay. Representatives from JB Vang, do you want to come up to the microphone, please, and introduce yourself, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Justin Fincher. I'm with JB Vang, the developer on the project. So I'd be happy to answer the questions on the waiver and the traffic variance, or traffic percentages at the intersection. But before I do that, if you don't mind, I'd just like to clarify a couple things on the project.
Oh, certainly.
First of all, we're happy, delighted to be here. It's an honor. We've been working on this project for 4 years, so 4 years in the making of making sure we have a project that we feel comfortable that we can own and manage and operate, and for it to be successful for our tenants, and also to be a positive contribution to the city of Maplewood. So we feel like we're doing that, and happy to be in front of you with this opportunity. We have been awarded financing through the state, MHFA, through their super RFP. So we have full financing in place. We are undergoing some construction pricing exercises, but if all goes well, we do hope to break ground as soon as this fall. That's ambitious, but what we're shooting for. So very excited to be here tonight. About the parking waiver, that did come up during the design review and planning commission. And first of all, speaking on experience, we just turned over about a year ago a 60-unit apartment project, affordable apartment project, very similar in concept to what you have in front of you tonight. That was 60 units. We provided 60 parking stalls. Like I said, we've been managing that for about a year now, have not received, not to my knowledge, have not received a complaint from property management or from tenants, and it seems to be running smoothly from what we can see. From our perspective, we did review the traffic ratio to units many times and felt comfortable with a 1.5 to 1 parking ratio. Again, we think we could even go lower than that, but to feel comfortable about operating the property, knowing there is not street parking, that's where we wound up with our 103 stalls. And then in addition to that, you know, it was mentioned this is an affordable housing project, so I should mention we do have 65 units with a range in incomes from 30% AMI all the way up to 60% AMI. We do have 14 of those units which are set aside for supportive housing, 7 for high-priority homeless individuals and families, and then 7 for people with disabilities. So that's, again, 14 in total. So just doing, and then we have another 4 units, that are set aside strictly for tenants at 30% AMI. So if we backed out 18 of those units from our total unit count, just assuming that maybe that population doesn't necessarily always own and operate a vehicle, we would be at your 2 to 1, we'd be at 94 parking stalls. So that's just, I guess, a counter argument to, wanting to have to look at the unit mix and the makeup of the tenants inside the building. But nonetheless, we feel the 1.5 is more than adequate. On the traffic counts, so we did engage SRF Consulting to conduct just a traffic memo. It wasn't a full GDMP by any means, but they did initial assessment of our unit mix and that intersection, and they basically concluded that it increased the traffic count by 5% at the intersection, far below what the standards are for that intersection that I believe Mr. Love was referring to. So,
Thank you very much. All the lights are lit up here. I can see them, you can't. So, I don't remember, I apologize, I don't remember the order. I think Councilmember Villavicencio was first, I believe, but we'll get everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, actually, you just answered my question. My question was, what was the AMI for the affordable housing rental? So thank you.
Okay, then we'll work out from the outside. Councilmember Cave.
Hi, welcome. This project looks phenomenal. Great affordability numbers you have in there. It's definitely something that's always needed. My question will be on-site management. Are you proposing to be the on-site management, and if you are, for how long is your dedication to that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cave, we will not be the designated property manager. We don't do that in-house. We're a small shop of more real estate development and facilities management related folks. But we have hired Premier Housing Management to be the full-time property manager, and they're more than qualified to manage affordable housing in and around the Twin Cities. I don't know how many hundreds of units that they own and manage and operate. And in addition to that, we do have Simpson Housing as our supportive housing service provider. So they will also be on-site part-time, but they will be on-site to facilitate in the management of those individuals that on the supportive housing side of things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Justin, for coming here. Super excited about this project. It's much needed, as Councilmember Cave said. One of my big pieces, this has been in the community for many years as a funeral home that's predominantly used by the Hmong community. I consider it a spiritual ground in that area there. Have there, in previous funeral homes that has been taken down, like the one on Dale, there was ceremonies that were conducted in that area. Having it being a spiritual ground for the Hmong community, has there been any conversations that you've had? Have you considered having conversations with 18 Council of Minnesota around what the procedures are around that piece?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Lee, that's a great question. I can say that the developer is affiliated with the ownership entity of the property. I can't speak specifically for that partnership group that's selling the property to the developer, but I can assure you that they are in good hands in terms of making sure that that transition will be the right one. But again, I can't speak for the seller, but we will make sure to make that as a clarifying point to them after tonight's meeting. So I'm sorry, I can't speak specifically to that, but I'm most assuredly think that is in place and will happen. So.
Sure. I wanted to bring it up because I've had some conversations with the elders in our community, and that's part of the just cultural awareness, having that being a funeral home used for many years for the Hmong community, and the Hmong community is a very spiritual culture in general. So thank you for bringing that. I would appreciate if you could bring that back to them. So,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
Well, here comes the environmental lady. Two things. You are sticking to the green building as much as possible? Yes? Okay.
That's correct.
And secondly, I would just call your attention to the landscaping recommendations in the packet from Sean Finwell and Carol Gurnis. Carol Gurnis is our plant guru. And I would ask that you follow her instructions in your replacements because you're so close to the savanna that we wouldn't want any noxious type things being used. So I would appreciate if you would follow the instructions that are in the landscape plan.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Juniman, yes, we will make sure to work closely with staff to make sure we're addressing their comments, especially as it relates to landscaping. So.
Thank you.
All the lights are now off, so we can move on. We have two recommended actions. Council members, would someone like to make a motion?
I motion to approve a resolution for a conditional use permit approving a 4-story, 65 unit multifamily apartment project to be constructed at 1310 Frost Avenue East.
Second. Okay. Moved by Councilmember Cave, and it was in unison. I guess we're going to give it to Councilmember, we'll give it to Councilmember Villavicencio. You were loud and I heard you over there. But it did sound pretty simultaneous. It was like a choir over here. Okay, so seconded by Councilmember Villavicencio. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We have one other motion. Would someone like to make that?
Motion to approve a resolution for design review approving a 4-story, 65-unit multifamily apartment project to be constructed at 1310 Frost Avenue East.
Second.
Moved by Lee, seconded by Juniman. The motion to approve a resolution for design review approving a 4-story, 65-unit multifamily apartment project to be constructed at 1310 Frost Avenue East. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you very much. We look forward to the project.
Thank you.
Councilmember, moving on to our agenda item, we have the closure of the DMV and passport services before us. City Manager Coleman, this is your topic for tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. Staff is tonight recommending the closure of our DMV and passport services. Decision to recommend closure is based upon a review of the core functions of the city, as well as the city's overall financial sustainability. Over the past 5 years, the combined losses of both departments, actually there's a mistake on that number, it's 1.3 million with both the DMV and passports in losses over the last 5 years. There are 4 recommended actions for you this evening. The first one is a motion to approve the resolution terminating the Deputy Registrar agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. The second is to approve a resolution terminating certain contracts with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Third motion is to immediately terminate the city's provision of passport services. And the fourth motion is to provide severance packages to the impacted employees. So for background, I know most of you are pretty familiar with this. I've talked with each of you individually, and so you're aware of this process and why we feel the need to do this. I want to just say, first of all, this is not something that we like to do. This is the worst thing that I can be asked to do. It's not fun. It's very difficult for our employees, and I have to say they have been just fantastic employees. They're friendly, they're professional, they're dedicated. And I think a couple of you have said, I hear about the great service at Maplewood, and I think that's why people come from different communities to our facilities, is because of the great people we have here. So the decision was not based on any of their performance or what the employees were doing. It's based upon a review of the core functions of the city of Maplewood, as well as our overall financial sustainability. And let me just define a little bit about what we mean when we say core functions. These are services that are required to be provided by the city of Maplewood to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of our residents and taxpayers. These are services that are not provided by other entities. Unfortunately, both the DMV and passports are not considered to be core functions. They're convenience for the people that live and come here from other communities. And we're actually providing this service for the state of Minnesota. They do the DMV stuff, and for the federal government who issues the passports. So we're doing a service for 2 other government agencies, and frankly, the reimbursements for those services to us for that work has not kept up with pace of inflation or staff costs or healthcare costs. We are losing money. Things got really difficult over the last few years. First, we had a hiccup with the software that was used. I think everybody will remember MinLars and how that didn't work, and that really started to tie up our transactions took longer. And then we went to Real ID and enhanced IDs for driver's license, and instead of taking 10 minutes, those transactions now take 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes more if people don't come with the right information. So they're taking longer to do, which is part of the reason that we just can't keep up and make the money that we need to do to sustain that service. So when we look at both the short and long-term growth, these two areas are not considered to be financially sustainable. Over the past 5 years, the combined losses of both departments, as I mentioned, were $1.1 million for the DMV and $153,000 for passports, which adds up to $1.3 million in losses over the last 5 years. In addition, if the city were to keep providing these services, we'd likely have to raise taxes by 2%. That, I think, is a little bit alarming, as we know that we have many challenges in public safety and other areas of the city's budget. And we also have a lot of people that live in our community that are on fixed incomes. And this would be hard to tack that onto that for a service that we don't need to provide. As I mentioned before, core services are public safety, public works, economic development, parks and natural resources, and maintaining our infrastructure, our streets. So one of the things that we're doing is we have met with the AFSCME union, business agent, and stewards, and they have been with us the entire way of this process. They were with us at our meeting when we met with all the employees. We had a meeting last Thursday where the union facilitated the bumping activity that happens because of the union. So people who are more senior here and their longevity at the city had first rights to bump other people to keep their jobs. So that process has been completed with AFSCME. And then just today, Mr. Darrow and Terry Mermot from HR met with the union stewards and business agent and all of the employees impacted by this to go through the severance package. The severance package in the report says it's $148,000, but as a result of the bumping that took place, that has been reduced to $105,000. The severance package includes 1 week or 1 week of salary for every year that they've been with us. In addition to that, we've extended health care and dental until the end of June. And we are also providing a job placement assistant program that people can get help writing resumes, applying for jobs, other health issues that they might have during this process. We're making that available to our employees that are losing their positions as well. In terms of how we are communicating this out to the community, tomorrow, if this passes the City Council, tomorrow we will be closing on the DMV and passports. Public Works is making a big sign to put out in the parking lot. We will do, we have the ability to text message all of our people who have appointments with us. So we will be telling them that those appointments have been canceled. They will be directed to the 5 other facilities that are within a 5-mile radius. So people will be able to know where they can go to get those services. We're also going to be doing this on social media. And we will be contacting neighboring cities to let them know that this is happening and that they might see some different customers, more customers, we hope, for their sake, that they can take care of these people. And just general signage on the building and around out in the parking lot to let people know what's going on. This has been quite a bit of information I've shared with you, but I think most of you are aware of what's been happening in terms of the budget, and I don't see another way out. This is not something we like to do, but it's certainly not going to be sustainable. Salaries are going to go up, healthcare costs are going to go up, all kinds of costs are going up, and we won't be able to keep up. If we can't keep up now, I don't see how we're ever going to catch up. So that's the unfortunate picture I'm painting for you tonight, but I hope that you will take into consideration the 4 actions for motions this evening.
Thank you for that report, City Manager Coleman. Council members, the way I would like to do this is to, if anyone has any questions, let's start with the questions, and that way we get all of the information out, and then we will go into a discussion. So is there anyone who has a question for City Manager Coleman? Okay, question? Councilmember Juniman.
So can you please share with us, and this is for the public mainly, the legislature is supposedly taking up this issue this year, but even with what they presume to possibly give us for transactions, what that means?
Sure. So the bill, as I understand it, has actually doubled the per transaction in the DMV by twice, so it's $8, they're going to double that to 16. And they also have $10 million, which they're going to share with 243 people who do this, deputy registrars. So I think just rough math, it'd be maybe $60,000, $80,000. The last time they divvied up money to us, we got quite a bit more, but that was the Minlars thing, and that was when they really upped things for the first time. One of the other things that I think is kind of interesting is in the state proposal, they're offering to pay us more per transaction, but then they're reducing the number of transactions on the driver's license piece. So instead of going every 4 years to get your picture taken, you can go every other year to get your picture taken. So we're actually
Every
every
8
8
years.
years, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're actually losing half of the transactions. So I don't understand how the bill got created or who wrote it, but that seemed a little interesting to me.
I think that's fairly obvious. It's from the legislature.
Yeah, so, you know, I'd say probably $80,000 maybe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Councilmember Juniman, do you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Just really two questions, actually. One is, do we know if any other cities are looking to also close within our proximity?
Well, I can say that it has been mentioned by the city of White Bear Lake that if this legislation does not pass, they are going to close. But I have not heard it from anywhere else. Bloomington actually closed theirs last fall.
Okay. Thank you. Just one more question.
Question?
I don't know if this is maybe a HR thing where we may not be able to disclose, but I was just curious, you know, of our folks who are workers of the DMV, how many of those would be displaced in terms of will not have a job? If that's something that we can answer, that is.
Yeah. So I have that right here. I just want to make sure I'm giving you the right number. So we have one full-time DMV supervisor and 7 licensing specialist positions, which are mostly part-time. There are a couple of full-time people in that are going to be terminated. And then with the exception of one position, and they actually, 4 of the DMV people, or 3 DMV people and another employee interviewed for a new position in the Community Development Department this morning. So one of those people could get another position at the city.
Councilmember Cave, you have a question?
Yeah, just a follow-up kind of on Councilmember Lee. If you could explain, Melinda, the difference, because I didn't realize this, the amount of people you have to have when you have a federal and a state, how you can't use everybody
Right.
the same?
That's a good question. So I think one of the things that happened along the way when we started doing passports, we started with DMV, I think, back in 1978. But when we took on passports, which was several years later, the federal government told us that we had to bifurcate the staff. You couldn't sell passports and DMV. You could only do one or the other. So that necessitated hiring more staff. So that just sort of fed into this spending more money than we're bringing in.
And there's no cross-training?
Yeah.
They can't.
You can't even do that.
Yeah, you can't cross-train. Okay. I see no more lights on, and, you know, I wanted to comment on this. And what all of us, at some point in time, we get to write for the Maplewood Living. And Joe Sharonson, our communications director, is in the audience. He'll appreciate this because I have my article ready. It is due May 17th. It's going out in the June Maplewood Living, and I wrote the article on this very issue because this is a very challenging thing for us. And the title of my article is Why I Voted in Favor of Closing the Maplewood DMV. So this is really the discussion part, and I kind of captured it all because we certainly have been looking at this for a little while, and this is certainly a challenge. But folks, I'll just remind everyone that's what we're elected to do, that we are elected representatives of our community. So here's my article. In preparation and planning for our 2024 budget, we took a deeper look at the financial sustainability of the Maplewood DMV and passport services. We knew the DMV and passport reimbursement rates from the state and federal government were insufficient to pay for the services we were providing, but we were hopeful with a large state surplus that the DMV rates would be increased to cover our costs. We kept DMV and passport services open during the pandemic to provide continuing service during a very challenging time. I personally have used the DMV and passport service many times and have appreciated their convenience and their professionalism. Looking back 5 years, the DMV and Passport Services Department has lost $1.3 million, representing the difference between the reimbursement rates provided by the state and federal government and the actual cost to Maplewood residents and businesses to provide the services. Based on the losses and the future projected losses, it was time to evaluate whether Maplewood DMV and Passport Services was sustainable. As I see the issue, we have 3 options. Number 1, close the DMV and stop any further financial losses. 2, continue to operate the DMV and Passport Services and account for the losses by a dedicated annual 2% property tax increase to be paid by our residents and our businesses. That is each and every year. Or make some other deep cuts in essential city services in measure with the annual DMV losses. After much thought, many emails, and phone calls about the DMV, I decided that closing the DMV and Passport Services was the only choice that makes sense. DMV and Passport Services are not core city functions. They are state and federal functions that were provided at our Maplewood City Hall for convenience. Our core functions include public safety, roads, parks and trails, and city infrastructure. It is not fair to ask Maplewood residents and businesses to continue to subsidize the operation of the DMV and Passport Services. In reaching my decision, I thought of our Maplewood seniors living on fixed incomes, and I thought about young families that are struggling with high inflation and increased gas, food, and childcare costs. They would directly bear the burden of a dedicated 2% property tax increase each year. Operating the DMV and Passport Services has created a hole in our budget that the council had to address. We do not have any fluff in our budget, and I oppose cutting any essential city services in favor of continuing a convenience service outside a core city function. Our budget simply can't absorb losses of between $200,000 and $300,000 each year. The council recently committed to adding 3 new firefighter paramedics each year for the next 3 years, in addition to this year. This represents a core city function, and it was based on increased calls for service and the need to provide effective fire and EMS services to the community. This will come with an increase in costs to our residents and businesses. Serving as an elected city representative means I must prioritize how we spend our resources and vote accordingly. I chose to place public safety ahead of convenience services that can be performed through the mail, online, or at other DMV passport service centers. We sometimes need to adjust and make hard decisions. The fact closing the DMV Passport Center would result in staff layoffs was the hardest part of the decision for me. We have excellent staff who work hard and offer great customer service. That part of the decision weighed heavily on me, but was somewhat offset by the help and support the city has offered to the impacted staff and the fair severance packages provided by the city. Serving as the mayor of Maplewood means that sometimes I must make difficult decisions. Voting to close the DMV was a tough one, but I know it was the right decision for Maplewood. This is the article that I'll be submitting to Joe for publication in the June Maplewood Living.
Mayor,
Council members, I would
give you a
love to
comment?
hear your opinion. Council members, I'd love to hear your opinion, please. Is there anyone who would like to start? I didn't see who started.
I think it was John Berry was first.
Councilmember Lee.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for writing that. So, and thanks to City Manager for the presentation for about the DMV. You know, I I've given the DMV a lot of thought this last few weeks, just really thinking about the process and really thinking about the people that would be impacted by the DMV in general. In the last few weeks, I've received phone calls and emails from members both in Maplewood, Oakdale, and in St. Paul, talking about the DMV and how important the DMV is for our community. About 2 weeks ago, I spent about an hour here at the DMV getting my passport done. And during my time that I spent here at the DMV getting my passport done, I helped translate it for a gentleman. I also then helped provide some information about passport information to a family that was there, and really just kind of monitored, who was in the DMV, what was happening around the DMV. Comment from a young lady to one of our representatives at the counter about how much she appreciated our person at the counter walking her through the process of. I couldn't tell what transaction was happening, but how much she appreciated that transaction happening. I think there's a couple things that I want us to take into consideration, Mayor and Council. As a city, this may not be a core function of our city operation, but I think there's a big social aspect to this and the human side of this that I want us to take a little bit more into consideration. The people in our city, the folks that don't have access to these, well, what I'm thinking about is I reflect a lot about my experience as a child social worker, taking my parents to the DMV, translating for them, helping them through the process. And what we provide here is a service that is essential to a lot of our non-English speaking residents here. And not just in Maplewood, but our community, Oakdale and in Maplewood. Then in addition to that, we have elders who've been contacting me about being able to come here, getting the services hands-on, getting services in person. With that, the feedback from constituents, what I really want to see is, I know this piece is moving really fast, what I really want to see from this process. And I want to also say that financially, it doesn't make any sense. I do want to say that all front. It doesn't make any sense. We're going in the red as a project manager, as a business owner. It doesn't make sense financially. But the other option is wanting to make sure that someone and everyone at some point touch the DMV in their life. Either it's a ID, it's a passport, it's the driver's license. Someone and everyone in our community touch the DMV at some point. So I want to see us as a community, the city of Maplewood. We pride ourselves in community engagement. I want to see us do a little bit more community engagement in this particular issue to see what residents are interested in. I know the 2% tax is a burden on a lot of folks, but I want to see if that is something that the community would consider if we were to put that on the table. It's a big, we have the staff that I'm thinking about, we have the community that I'm thinking about, we have the folks who don't have access, who have access to technology but don't know how to use technology that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about my experience as a kid growing up, navigating the system. As easy as things has become in the last few years here, I think it's still complicated for a lot of people. Something else that I think a lot about too is, we're on an appointment basis right now, and if we were to go to a non-appointment, and Melinda, city manager, you guys have showed us those numbers. I appreciate that, doing that extra research. I know bringing those questions up. This model and this ideology, the people right now, they know us as an appointment only. I think there's a lot of other ideas, things that we have not yet explored, and I think this is moving really fast. I would like to, us as a city, have more conversations in our community. One other point that I want to quickly make is the real ID requirement is coming to an end here, May 7th of 2025. This is a critical part of our community right now. This is a critical service, and we all know how complicated it is to get the real ID. I speak English perfectly fine, and I still had a hard time navigating the real ID situation. I think closing so abruptly and so soon, I think we're doing a disservice to some of our community members, not just members of Maplewood, but our surrounding community members, in providing this service to them. These are services that we as a city should be providing to our constituents. These are services that they need to just get by. So my ask for the council really is more, before we make a decision on this particular piece, that we have more community conversation. I want us to be a little bit more strategic about closing and being mindful of our community, the people in our community, the process itself, and then also, how we help people navigate at least through the real ID requirement by the government. So that's just my comment.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Juniman?
She was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Cave.
Okay.
Thank you. I also want to thank you for your comments, both of you. And I do think the community is a very big piece of this. I think it's a very big piece whenever you're dealing with budgeting. And budgeting, I know sometimes the answer funnels down and we get, should we close, should we not close? But this has been an ongoing topic for the last couple of years that was brought up because it was like, look at this. So we've had eyes on it. It's just we haven't made a move on it yet. And that all depends on what the economy and taxes and everything look like, our essential services, and what our values are on the council, and what our priorities are. I do want to thank staff for bringing stuff to our attention. I know it's really hard when you budget and cutting something. You guys really did a great job, because I had a lot of questions about what you were going to do with our staff, and everybody talks about what a wonderful staff we have here, and hands down, it's all around it, it's great. And I really feel like you guys handled it really well about how you went about offering jobs to people. I had a lot of emails and phone calls, and they were like, why are you just displacing people? And that isn't what we did. We did not just displace people. We're working with people, we're helping people. Your severance package, you allow unions bumping people. There's other facilities that want these experienced people, a lot of part-time if they want to, go part-time. So I really appreciate that fact. And looking at the long and short-term growth, the financial piece of running this, unfortunately, is it was something that was hands down for me, the financial part. I think Minlar's did a number on a lot of communities with this service, and the federal and state reimbursements really are absolutely nothing. They leave everything up to the city. And when you don't have abundant, we could be taxing citizens like crazy to get whatever we want here, but I think looking at this piece, I feel like it's something it's something I'm in favor. I don't want to close it, but I am in favor when you look at the financial piece for the budget reasons. And I know community members out there, that there are other places. I always like to have, there's other cities that are doing this, so we're not just, they can go other places. But I want to come up with a solution. And I know there's business centers that operate in other cities. I know we don't have them in Ramsey County right now, but I think that would be something that a licensing center that could be possibly opened up. Somebody could start a business here, and it would give somebody, a startup in a business, and it would give employees. So it's something we can look at, or they can look at for our city. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, since you brought up the county, Hennepin County actually does support those things. Ramsey County does not.
Washington does too.
There's a shock. Anyway, just to get that straightened out. This is a really difficult thing to do, to even think about. It makes me really sad, as the one who's been around the longest and taken advantage of the system like for many, 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 many years. It's a really hard thing to think about. But like Councilmember Kay, when you see the money part of this, how do you justify when you're supposed to be the stewards of the taxes and supply all the services that people actually need? How do you justify something that has lost this much money over the last 5 years? I have a message to the state of Minnesota and one to the federal government. Shame on you, taking advantage of us for all these years. As a matter of fact, I had a constituent call me, and he was astounded that these were not state employees. He thought they were state employees working here doing all these things because they're state jobs. So he was surprised and grateful, actually, to know that these were city employees that have been doing this all this time. So it's I don't understand why they don't think it's worth more when we're doing a service for them, and they don't think it's worth more. It's kind of astounding to me. But the buck always stops at the bottom of the bottom rung of the ladder, and that'd be the city. And so at this point, 2% per year on people's taxes speaks loudly to almost everyone, but particularly the people who are in marginal positions. And so that's what we have to think about. It isn't, oh, well, let's just get rid of this, that'll make life easier. If anything, it's not going to make life easier for our citizens or for the city. Because this has been something we've done for a long time. There are going to be people still, even with all of the social media and all of our attempts to let people know, there are still going to be people who are upset when they find out that we're not doing it anymore. I understand that, and it makes it really difficult. But when I think of, while I think we should work regionally in certain ways, I don't think it's up to the people of Maplewood who pay taxes here to support something that people from St. Paul and Oakdale and Roseville and White Bear come and use. If the world was more perfect, it would be fine. If we could keep doing it the way we had done it in the past, and it wasn't such a financial drain. But I think it's interesting that we heard from people from those cities, and to the one gentleman, I said, perhaps you should go to the Oakdale City Council and ask them why you don't have one. He said he didn't. He said he thought about that, but he didn't think it would fly. So, I mean, certainly they have appreciated it, and all of our citizens have appreciated it. This isn't about lack of appreciation. It's about lack of continuous sustainable funding and nothing more. And yes, I have heard from many people too that our people have by far been the most helpful and the friendliest of anywhere they've ever gone. Has nothing to do with the employees. They've been model employees, and they work, to be crude, their butts off some days. And they put up with some fairly mean people some days. And it isn't that we don't appreciate that. I know we all do. I certainly do. But this is a very sad moment for me. But I have to agree with the mayor. We can't ask Maplewood taxpayers for 2% more a year to keep something going that gets further behind and further behind and further behind. If we saw more funding coming from the state, or maybe the Fed stepping up to the plate and admitting what it was worth to have their passports done locally, then it might be a different story. But if you look at it, in my mind, in the correct light, they've been using us all these years, and it's finally caught up with us, not them. So I'm sad to be part of this, but I don't see a taxpayer's way out of it. I just don't.
Thank you. Councilmember Villavicencio.
The first, when this was first brought to us and I heard it, obviously I thought, well, it doesn't make sense financially. And honestly, when I first ran for office, all I heard was negative things about the DMV because nobody likes the DMV. But through the time of when this was brought to us to now, I have received a lot of emails and phone calls, obviously just like everyone else here has. But the connecting thing that I noticed from everybody who at least spoke to me was that it didn't seem like a convenience to them. And that the folks that it wasn't a convenience for was people who cannot maybe drive outside of Maplewood or cannot get outside of Maplewood, meaning that they're mostly seniors who want this to stay. And so I don't think that the folks that are most marginalized or most affected by this will be the ones that will be paying the taxes on it, unfortunately, right? Because most seniors don't pay property taxes who are on fixed incomes. If they're on fixed incomes?
No, they pay property. If you live in a property and you're the owner of the property, you pay property taxes.
Right, but most people who are on fixed incomes can't afford to own a home.
I'm on a fixed income and I own a home and I pay property taxes, as does Councilmember Juniman. Just a point of
But the most marginalized folks are not. That's not the folks who would be most affected by this. And so I just think that we should take some more time to come to see if there's any other solutions. You know, something that Rebecca mentioned is that somebody could open it up, a private company to do that. Hasn't there been other cities who allowed that private company to be in the city, the city hall?
City Manager Coleman.
With regard to whether or not somebody could open a licensing center is up to the state. In the 7-county metropolitan area, 6 of those counties were given the responsibility for running those. Ramsey County did not choose to do that. So we really don't have a say whether someone can open another DMV or not. That's not up to us. I think what Councilmember Kay was talking about would be the possibility of a startup business, maybe within the city somewhere, but we couldn't sanction it, or Oakdale, some other city can do it, but we can't do it as a private thing. We don't have the authority to do that. And while I've got the floor here for a second, I'd also like to say that we did put together some data for Councilmember Lee on the appointment versus non-appointment. And the people that had appointments or not, did not take appointments that you could go in anytime, they were losing as much money as we are, maybe a little bit less, but they were losing money too.
And there people gripe about waiting too long.
Yeah, waiting in the lines.
And people don't like the lines, which we heard before we pivoted to COVID. We had lines out the door, and people weren't too happy about that either. So it's a tough situation, but yeah.
Councilmember Villavicencio, is there anything else you'd like to add? No. Okay, then the lights are all off, and we have 4 motions before us, council members, and I fully acknowledge that this is a very challenging decision that we have to make as elected officials of our city. I will start off by making the motion to approve the resolution terminating Deputy Registrar agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. Is there a second?
Second.
Which one was that? Okay, couldn't tell the voice there. Moved by Abrams, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the resolution terminating Deputy Registrar agreement with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Did you get that, City Clerk sent? Thank you. I'll make the motion to approve the resolution terminating certain contracts with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman, the motion to approve the resolution terminating certain contracts with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Juniman.
I neglected to, I was going to say this in my comments and I forgot it, that they've also kind of helped with a nail in the coffin because they've gone to doing everything online. Everybody is so happy not to have to go anywhere to get their fishing and hunting licenses. So they've added to this.
Thank you. Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The next motion to immediately terminate the city's provision of passport services. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Cave, the motion to immediately terminate the city's provision of passport services. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
And the final motion to provide severance packages to impacted employees.
Second.
Moved by Abrams, seconded by Juniman, the motion to provide severance packages to impacted employees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you very much, council members. That was probably one of the most difficult decisions that we've had to make in quite some time.
Possibly ever.
Okay, let's move on. We have award of bids on our 2 summer projects. Mr. Love, this is your staff report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, so as you mentioned, we are before you tonight with 2 projects that we've received bids on. Joining us tonight is John Drosch, our Assistant City Engineer, who's been leading these projects, and he'll be providing a presentation to you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So like you said, we're here tonight to award construction contracts for 2 projects. The first project before you tonight is the Myrtle Sterling Area Street Improvement Project. The streets included with this project are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. This project is a combination of 2 types of construction, pavement rehabilitation, which is mainly focused on just replacing that deteriorated pavement, as well as some spot replacement of curb and gutter. Those improvements are proposed for Kingston Avenue, Ripley Avenue, Myrtle Street and Lakewood Drive, south of Ripley Avenue, Knoll Circle, as well as Mary Street. The remaining streets are proposed for a full street reconstruction, so that would include a full replacement of the whole road section, the addition of concrete curb and gutter on all those streets, installation of a storm sewer system, and the replacement of water main on Myrtle Street and Lakewood Drive to the north of Ripley Avenue. We opened bids on this project on April 27th. We received 5 valid bids on the project, with the lowest bid coming from Bituminous Roadways at just over $3.3 million, which came in $923,000 under the engineer's estimate for this project. So just kind of give a frame of reference there, when we're estimating these projects, we take a look at the bid prices that we received in the prior year. We adjust them upwards for inflation and market conditions. And that's what we did for this project and the other project we're going to talk about tonight. However, the costs went in the opposite direction on these projects, which is a good thing for the city. In talking with contractors out there, it sounds like it was just a result of good bid timing. So there's been a slowdown in the private markets. There's been less state work out there, which resulted in a really competitive bidding environment for our projects. So we received some excellent bid prices for this project. Looking at the project funding plan, the proposed funding plan shown on the right-hand side of the screen at just over $4.1 million. That does come in approximately $1.2 million under the currently approved funding plan that we did back in the feasibility stage of the project. The largest reductions are shown in the water main improvements, as well as the storm sewer improvements with the Environmental Utility Fund. If approved, this construction project would start in June of the year, and leading up to that, we would have additional neighborhood meetings with the project residents to bring them up to speed, let them know what to expect during the construction process. We'd also send out some additional mailings to let them know how to contact us during the process. If all goes well, this project would be completed in October of the year. So with that, we are recommending approval of the resolution receiving bids and awarding a construction contract for the Myrtle Sterling Area Street Improvements, City Project 2216 to Bituminous Roadways, Inc. And staff is available for questions.
Council members, are there any questions? I think we're running out of questions because this has been back before us many, many, many times.
But John wants questions.
Council members, is there a motion?
I motion to approve the resolution receiving bids and awarding a construction contract for Myrtle Sterling Area Street Improvements, City Project 22-16 to Bituminous Roadways, Inc. for the base bid.
Second.
Moved by Cave, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the resolution receiving bids and awarding a construction contract for Myrtle Sterling Area Street Improvements, City Project 22-16 to Bituminous Roadways for the base bid. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. The next one is concerning Woodland South Lawn Area Street Improvements. Mr. Love.
Yes, Mayor and Council, again, John Drosch will be providing a presentation. He'll also touch on, you might remember this project with some of the last-minute decisions that we had about sidewalk on Raditz, and he'll provide an update in the presentation about that as well.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So again, we're here for considering awarding a construction contract for the Woodland South Lawn Area Street Improvements. The streets included in this project are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. And again, similar to that last project, include a combination of pavement rehabilitation and full reconstruction. So Germain Court, Kennard Street, South Lawn Drive, Ariel Street, Furness Court, and that segment of Woodland Avenue between White Bear and Ariel Street, those are all proposed for that pavement rehabilitation, where we're just focusing on replacing that deteriorated street pavement. Woodland Avenue, you might remember from the public hearing and some of the other meetings, we are looking at a reconfiguration of that roadway to better meet current and future traffic demands and improve pedestrian and traffic safety on that segment. So we're looking at narrowing that roadway up quite significantly from 52 feet down to, it ranges along the length, but down to up to 30 feet in width. And the idea behind that is to promote slower vehicle speeds, make that corridor feel a little more constricted, hopefully slow people down out there. It also reduces impervious surfaces on there and reduces runoff coming off the site. In addition to that, along Woodland and Ariel, we're looking at filling in the missing gaps in the sidewalk network, improving pedestrian safety along those corridors as well. On Raditz Avenue, we are looking at narrowing that street up from the existing roughly 30 feet wide down to 26 feet wide, as well as adding some bump outs in the curb to further narrow it up in a couple of locations. And the idea behind that, again, is to constrict that roadway, make it feel a little tighter, and hopefully promote slower vehicle speeds out there. In addition to that, we are proposing that sidewalk on the north side of Raditz Avenue, connecting from South Lawn Drive all the way over to White Bear Avenue, providing that off-street location for pedestrians to walk, improving the pedestrian safety along that corridor, which is something we heard a lot about at the neighborhood meetings and the public hearing. In addition to these improvements, we do have one bid alternate on this project, and that bid alternate was for the replacement of a deteriorated wood retaining wall along Jarvis Avenue. That is just to the east of Highway 61. Similar to the last project, we received five valid bids, with the low bid on this project coming from T.A. Shifsky and Sons of just shy of $2.4 million. This one came in roughly $647,000 under our engineer's estimate. So again, reflective of the excellent bid prices that we're seeing in that competitive bid market. Proposed funding plan shown on the right-hand side of the screen, just over $2.9 million. That one is roughly $584,000 lower than that current approved financing plan that we set back at the feasibility stage of the project, with the largest reduction seen on this one in the geo improvement bonds, which we're not proposing to use any of on this project now, as well as reductions in the environmental utility fund and the street revitalization fund. And then just a note on the bottom there, we were notified recently that we were awarded a $100,000 grant for this project, mainly focused on that reduction in impervious surface on Woodland Avenue. So our partners at Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District are supporting our project with a $100,000 grant. If approved, this project, again, will go into construction in early June, and we'd do all that resident correspondence leading up to that. And if all goes well, we'd have this project wrapped up in October of the year. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution, receiving bids and awarding construction contract for the Woodland South Lawn Area Street Improvements, City Project 2217, to T.A. Shifsky and Sons for the base bid plus bid alternate 1. And staff is available for questions.
Thanks. I have just one, maybe a point of clarification. Maybe I didn't hear you correctly. I think you said Jarvis, and isn't it Germain Court? Did I hear you wrong?
Mayor, that is correct. It is Germain Court. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Okay. Because I was going to say, that's pretty far away from everything else. Thank you, thank you. Okay, any questions, council members? Councilmember Cave?
No question, but just congratulations on the work you guys do in getting that grant. You guys always seem to pull something out, and we really appreciate it here at the city.
Yeah, thanks. Very nice. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution receiving bids and awarding a construction contract for the Woodland South Lawn Area Street Improvement City Project 22-17 to T.A. Shifsky and Sons for the base bid plus bid alternate 1.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Lee, the motion to approve the resolution receiving bids and awarding a construction contract for Woodland South Lawn Area Street Improvement City Project 22-17 to T.A. Shifsky and Sons for the base bid plus bid alternate 1. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. And with that, council members, we have worked through our agenda. I have to say it was a challenging agenda, and I really appreciate the comments and the thoughtfulness of our council in going through some very challenging times. So I want to thank you all for your respect, for your participation. I think my impression is that we all want what's the absolute best for our community. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. And with that, we are adjourned.